Hello folks on YouTube, Northstar here with another Singularity Let's Play. I hope you all are well. This is probably going to be a very short video, but it's been a while since anything in this series, so I'm sure some of you are itching for more. Some of you may just stumble across this by happenstance, and for those new to my channel, welcome. Returning folks, welcome back. New folks, you can find a variety of different games that I stream. Besides this one, oh shoot, I was going to save up for that. Semi-firm cheese. This is, by the way, the cheese exploration and sell to Singularity. That's weird to say. I'm sure anyone overhears me thinks I don't know what they would think, but you can check out my playlists on been doing a lot of Dwarf Fortress and Crisis in the Kremlin Let's Play videos. Got a really massive buffer on the Crisis of the Kremlin. It doesn't take that much mental alertness from me, or at least it's something, I don't know, just maybe it takes more, and I make a lot of mistakes, but I guess it's forgiving enough once, well, I'm on my 9th campaign now that I'm recording. After failing on the first 7, I got to where I could probably consistently win, at least on the lower difficulties. I'm trying to work up towards being able to beat hard. I mean, I probably could do it already, but I don't want to overdo it, have to be too stressed out, because part of the point of that series is I can do it when I'm tired. For those not familiar with that, that's a series where you play as the premier of the Soviet Union and try and stop it from collapsing. Kind of all history. Game begins at the earliest in 1985, although there are start dates all the way out to 1991. At which point you'd be reforming the Soviet Union, I think, because it no longer existed by that point, really, or it's about to end, and it seems impossible to stop the collapse that late a date. But anyways, when I say being able to beat, I'm talking from the earliest date, which is the easiest, because you can smaller changes earlier make a bigger difference. It's a challenging game, but I don't know, I'm able to stream videos of it even when tired. Dwarf Fortress, on the other hand, I stress out over way more because it's a really hard game. So hard that there's an old community motto: losing is fun about it. Used to be a master of that game. I don't say that lightly. It's quite a brag. Back before long COVID, but now they have long COVID. Oh yeah, for those new to my channel, I'm disabled with long COVID. The brain fog makes it so some days I can't stream at all. I'm just too tired. Can't think clearly enough. Although you won't see gaps because I do buffers, so I have videos that record on previous days that happen to play on those days, and it's just continuous. There's, no gaps on the production releases of my channel. But one series has a gap. A buffer all the way out to February of 2027. That's my Stars Let's Play single player series, to give you guys an idea how big some of these buffers go. I've gotten more adept at video editing over time. Some of the newer ones are cut into as short as 15-minute videos, where some of the older stuff you could see like up to 90-minute videos. Once I learned how to do DaVinci Resolve, it's way quicker to cut videos in pieces on that than it is, say, Microsoft Clipchamp, which is what I started out with and really sucks as a program. It's, I guess, accessible for beginners, but everything it does poorly. I tried to invest in my skills because I really need my channel to grow to where I can monetize it and supplement my income with it. Right. I'm currently applying for Social Security and SSI. Very meager amount of money. Used to be you couldn't save anything up on it, but they had this thing called Able. It was actually right in January of 2017, I think. It was like one of the last things Obama's outgoing Congress did it, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe it was done right after the newly entered group that came in with Trump, I'm not sure. Either way, it created a special type of savings account that disabled people can put money into, where they can save up to 100,000 assets without disqualifying from mass society, something very few people know about, which is the problem with the patchwork of programs for disabled people in the United States. Is half the programs nobody even knows exists, and the people are supposed to administrate them barely know they exist. So how are they going to know the rules? And it's a mess. This is why we need something like a universal basic income, where you just give money to everyone, healthy, sick, doesn't matter, and just set taxes, higher on the rich and even working people. So, maybe working people get $1,000 a month, and well, you'd probably need more than that. I mean, SSI is just under $1,000 a month. It's not enough to survive on at all. But let's say they did $2,000 a month UBI. A lot of ordinary working class people might receive $2,000 a month, pay an extra $800 a month in taxes, and so they're $1,200 a month better off. Whereas higher tax brackets, you want it to be, it's essentially redistribution, so that the richest pay more in extra taxes than they receive in UBI. But it eliminates all the bureaucracy of deciding whether someone qualifies or not. And a huge patchwork program that's hard to administrate and has a huge bureaucratic overhead. And full bureaucrats who can take out their petty personal vendettas on people they don't like or who are from a community that they dislike. Personally, I've experienced problems with bureaucrats in particular community. They're very parochial and try to deny aid to anyone except from people from their city, even though they're in charge of administrating a larger area that includes neighboring towns and cities. And that's been a huge problem. That's the kind of thing that you couldn't have with UBI. Yeah. Instead, though, of course, the systems that help people who need help the most, like the disabled. Oh, not quite cheese. That's what I was saving for here. This is like Cheese Whiz or something. It's because it gives a badge. I was trying to get this badge because it speeds up future explorations, especially this one, but it gives a small bonus to all of them. I think it's all of them, or maybe it's just general simulation speed. Alright, I'll just grab some of this to maybe, I probably won't stay at this rank, but if I can stay over 250 in rank, I'll at least get some mutagen. And the event ends in 3 hours and 29 minutes. Let me finish my thought before I end this video. It's be a short one. Maybe I'll go for a 10-minute video. That's accessible, right? Shorter videos, more people watch. But yeah, all sorts of welfare programs under attack in the US. They have been for a very long time by neoliberals on both sides of the aisle. Neoliberal, by the way, is a term that's widely misunderstood in the United States, because liberal has the connotation of being left-wing. Liberal does not mean left-wing. Liberal was a term that originally, during the Industrial Revolution, referred to classical liberals, i.e. people who believed in laissez-faire. They wanted to deregulate everything, cut taxes on factory owners and such, so that they could build more factories and businesses and trust the market to solve all problems. I mean, literally all problems. Classical liberals were extreme. They basically be libertarians or anarchists in today's parlance. That movement died because it completely failed to come up with decent answers to the Great Depression. But then it was resurrected. It actually kind of hung on until the Great Depression, but it was sickly, and it was already being redone by the 1920s because it really started to lose, after World War I, a lot of its support. With the neoliberal movement technically having its roots in the 1920s, but really, once classical liberalism died off entirely during the Great Depression, neoliberalism took over, and that became the ideology that, quote, eat the world. It's the ideology of deregulation with a state that has a little more power than under classical liberalism, usually used to protect only the interests of the rich. This is the crap that people call corporate capitalism and such. That's neoliberalism. That's the proper term for it. And it's the ideology of both Bill Clinton and Ronald Reagan. The difference between Democrats and Republicans in the United States is purely an illusion. They're both neoliberal parties. The Democrats have a left wing of people who are mostly either progressives or social democrats. Social democrats are sometimes inaccurately called socialists. Like Bernie Sanders is not a socialist, even though he calls himself one. He's using the term wrong, probably intentionally, to be edgy or to perhaps intentionally remove the stigma of the term. So you can later, if persecuted for it, say, actually, I'm just a social democrat. But he's removed some of the stigma associated with socialist. It's a strategy, but Bernie Sanders is not a socialist. He's a social democrat. Social democrats believe in taming capitalism, but keeping it around, taming it with high taxes, high regulations, generous social programs. It doesn't work in the long run because even if you make a lot of gains and improve people's lives, you keep around the power of the billionaires. They still have immense power and they will eventually undo anything that you accomplish. Social democracy is not stable. You see, even in the Nordic social democracies, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, the social programs in those countries are under attack. There's an effort to gradually reduce taxes and cut social programs. This is most pronounced in Sweden and Finland right now. Although Norway and Denmark will probably see their programs scrapped next after neoliberalism is finished eating Sweden and Finland. So, yeah, that is where you see socialists step in who actually want to get rid of capitalism. They want to get rid of the private ownership of the means of production. That's the Marxist term for it, which is to say they want to take away. Think of how a company is owned, because this is basically what it's about. Think of how, say, a restaurant chain such as McDonald's is owned, where you have, it's a publicly traded company. You have CEOs where they don't actually own the company. That's something people claim all the time. They know nothing about actual ownership structures. It's owned by shareholders in the stock market. And any money that's not spent on buying necessary, materials and labor doesn't go to compensating the executives who tend to pay themselves excessive salaries, it's true. It gets passed on to the shareholders as stock dividends and buybacks. And who are the people who own large amounts of stock, enough that they can live purely off of money they own in the stock market? Those individuals are the capitalists, as in the capitalist class, or the high bourgeoisie in Marxist terminology. And those are also known, many people refer to them as the billionaires, although someone who's got 100 million is still part of that group as well. So you don't have to have $1 billion to be part of that group. You just need to have enough that you can live just off of returns on investments you have. Heck, that's even possible to do with $2 million in assets. If it's like $2 million in the stock market and you get to invest conservatively 6% yield, that's like $120,000 a year someone's making just off of their investments. That's enough to live off easily, even after taxes. But yeah, it's still a very small percentage of the population that has enough assets for that. People who substantially supplement their incomes with ownership of capital but still have to work for a living, or what's in Marxist terminology is known as the petite bourgeoisie. Properly the small bourgeois, so the high bourgeois can live off their assets. The high bourgeois can live off, the small can't. Because they don't have enough assets, but they have enough that, maybe half their income comes from ownership. So those are small business owners, medium business owners. And yeah, there's a whole analysis of how they tend to have right-wing views because they're torn between being pressured by the very rich from above and workers who want higher wages from below. But they tend to feel more threatened by the workers, and they're politically manipulated, even if their interests would actually be better allying with the workers into siding against them. So yeah, but those groups will inevitably hold enough political sway and manage to convince the populace, especially their ownership of the media, think tanks, that kind of thing, having bought politicians and then politicians being mouthpieces for their ideology, that will inevitably tear up social democracies. So instead, you see efforts to do things like either state ownership of businesses or workers' cooperatives. Those are both socialist mechanisms of ownership, at least assuming that the government is under control of the general population, not just a small group of rich people. If it's state ownership of a lot of business, but the government is still controlled by a handful of billionaires, that's what's known as state capitalism. And that's why you get people saying, oh, China is state capitalist, it's not socialist. That's not true, because the Chinese government is absolutely not under control of the billionaires. In fact, they have the billionaires very carefully watched and sometimes even put to death for things that ordinary people wouldn't be. That's the thing in China. They're absolutely socialist, although they follow a mixed market economy, which is to say they have a mix of socialist and capitalist ownership in their economy. And the special economic zones, which are mostly coastal cities, it's mostly capitalist ownership. That's where you have all these factories, the sweatshops and such, made in China. But inland, you have some factories and a lot of farms, mines, power plants, and those are mostly owned by the government. And outside the special economic zones, especially power plants, transportation infrastructure, hospitals, education. Yeah, people like to say, oh, police, fire department, schools, those are all socialist forms of government. In the United States, that's not true. Those are state capitalists because the government is under control of the billionaires, not the general populace. The United States is not really a democracy, it's an oligarchy. To use Aristotle's definition of forms of government, it's non-aristocracy. Oligarchy and aristocracy are similar, but aristocracy in Aristotle's model was a system where there was a greater element of meritocracy. There was a greater element of like wise philosopher leaders. You could have philosopher kings if it was a monarchy, but if it was an oligarchy, but the rulers were still picked for their philosophical understanding, that's what you get aristocracy. But then, that's not how the term is normally used. That's just how Aristotle used it. He invented the term and named it after himself, aristocracy. Of course, in Greek, it's a little bit different, the term. But, the term he came up with, we named the English version as honor. It gets very complicated, because there's translation issues, and just like the Bible is written in Greek and Aramaic. But people are used to, in America, reading the English translations. Anyways, Greek, Aramaic, and some of it in Latin. Some of the letters, I think, in the very end of the New Testament. Most of it was Greek and Aramaic, though, in Hebrew. Very little was Latin. And then the first translations were into Latin, and like translating everything, not just the one or two documents that were already in Latin. And then, for a long time, the Catholic Church wouldn't let people translate further into the local languages like French, English, German. And then it was, there were wars over this. Whole bunch of conflict over that idea, over letting people translate the Bible into their own languages so they could read it and understand it. It's this idea that only the clergy could interpret the Bible. Yeah, history is complicated. How am I doing time here? Oh, 20 minutes. Okay. Well, I don't want this to go any longer, so I hope you folks enjoyed. I'm just gonna try and get 1 or 2 more generators here in the cheese thing, so I can maybe not fall in ranking below 250. There's always some people who save a bunch of points and spend them right before event ends. Try and snipe position, so you have to have a buffer to avoid that happening to you. Right now it's saying I'm in the top 100, but I doubt that'll be the case at the end. There are probably at least 40 snipers. Anyways, wish you all the best. Take care of each other. Be kind to yourselves, and may you always find a guiding star to lead home. Until next time, this is Northstar. Adieu, and best luck to you all.